Men cannot access women's restrooms or facilities. A transgender person should be able to access facilities of the gender that they identify with.
Do you believe it's fair or not for biological boys to compete against girls in sports? It's a simple question.
I believe all students should have access to sport. And
so you do support biological boys competing against girls in sports?
I believe I answered the question.
No, you haven't. It's a simple question. Just answer the question. The administration either supports it or you don't.
If you're saying, do I believe transgender girls should have access to sports? Yes, I do.
Well, we have issued some guidelines that say that a provider who receives Medicare funding, Medicaid funding, must be prepared to offer gender-affirming care. We unfortunately ran into a couple of circuit courts that said differently, and so we're now in the process of having to work under those rulings. But we're not going to stop everywhere where we have an opportunity at the federal level. And again, I go back to yesterday's conversation where we don't control health care. We don't control how gender-affirming care is provided or if it is provided. But where we have laws that require you to fulfill your obligations, if you want that Medicaid dollar to come to your state, we're going to make sure you check the box.
Hello, my name is Admiral Rachael Levine, and I have the honor of being the Assistant Secretary for Health at the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Happy Pride. Happy Pride Month, and actually, let's declare it a Summer of Pride. Happy Summer of Pride. It's so important to have Pride as a celebration for our LGBTQI+ community.
My name is Ryan Casada. I use he, him pronouns, and I like to share my pronouns first before I start any conversation. I am a singer-songwriter and a transgender activist. I play a lot of protest songs to help the transgender liberation movement.
Well, thank you so much for being such a role model and a voice for the trans community.
As a trans person, as a trans man, I know that my body is politicized, my identity is politicized right now, especially with all of the anti-trans legislation and bills that are happening right now in our community and our country. And the thing that I am most passionate about is helping the transgender community to freedom, really, and that comes through often in my music.
You know, we just had Pride at the White House and DC Pride this weekend here, and the President and the First Lady spoke so eloquently about their support for the broader LGBTQI+ community, but particularly for the transgender community, trans youth, their families, their providers.
I think right now it is more difficult than ever to be trans because of this legislation, and I know I hear it from trans youth every single day, multiple people, that they are struggling because of the legislation, because of the media, the news, and we need to do everything we can right now so that trans youth can access the care that they need and they deserve. I know that this is life-saving care that is on the line.
So, you know, let's talk for a moment about the trans health care that our community needs and transgender medicine and gender-affirming care. I mean, that term is important, although our opponents have weaponized it.
I would say that it's life-saving care. It's not just affirming, it's life-saving. I'm 29 years old now, and when I was 14 years old, I knew that I needed top surgery in order to continue living, really. I was extremely depressed. My mental health was suffering extreme. And I had to wait until I was 18 to get my surgery. And I was still a teenager when I got my top surgery, which is now a very long time ago. And I have not had one single regret. And that surgery, it saved my life. That saved my life, really.
Transgender medicine is so important to our community.
I could barely wait until I was 18 to get my life-saving surgery. I can't imagine waiting at all. For most people, waiting is not a possibility, and that is really a threat to someone's life.
You know, we often say that gender-affirming care is health care, gender-affirming care is mental health care, and gender-affirming care is literally suicide prevention care. Would that be your view as well?
I 100% agree. And I know statistically speaking that the regret rate for gender-affirming surgery is about 1%, and that is significantly lower than the regret rate for general surgery like a knee replacement. And that is something that needs to be part of the conversation because the regret rate is so low.
You know, studies show that youth that have access to evidence-based gender-affirming care, who have the support of their families and their community, have actually excellent mental health outcomes. And much of this gender-affirming care is being done by our outstanding children's hospitals throughout the country.
Yeah.
We know that the youth, LGBTQI+ youth and trans youth have higher rates of depression and anxiety, but it's really important to emphasize that there's nothing inherent with being on the rainbow that would predispose someone to those mental health challenges. It is the bullying that you're talking about, the harassment, the discrimination that the youth and adults face, which leads to those mental health challenges. What I'm so impressed with your work and your singing is the joy that you express and the joy of living and the joy of being part of our community.
So my song, Hold On, You Belong, I wrote it last year just a few days before the Transgender Day of Visibility. And last year, too, we saw a lot of anti-trans legislation. This year, there's more than last year, I believe. And this song, it has become my anthem. And it talks about my experience growing up trans and doing my activism work, going on Larry King when I was 15 years old and doing my speaking to educate the masses. And the second verse of the song is what I want to sing, because that is where I am talking to trans youth and telling them to hold on. And the song is called Hold On, You Belong, People Like Us. They said, come share your story. Come on, say one thing that you wish you knew. All the wisdom from you nowadays, from the marches and the pride parades. But have you seen the news? How did you make it? How'd you stay so patient when the laws attack? What about this legislation? Will my family embrace it? Will they have my back? It's just something people like us get used to. It's just something you're gonna have to get used to. Hold on.
It really resonates so much to me, and I'm sure to everyone else in our community, but then all of our whole rainbow family, and then all of our allies and our families. So, you know, pride to me means hope and change. And I think that our community needs hope, and you bring hope to our community. Our president and vice president and our administration bring hope to our community. What does pride mean to you?
Pride is still a protest to me. We are still actively protesting. And while it is still a protest, it is also a celebration of our authenticity and who we are as individuals. I think that our community is so beautiful and vibrant. And honestly, seeing all of the young people being themselves, that is what makes my Pride Month. And that gives me hope. And that gives me motivation and inspiration to keep going and keep doing what I am doing and go around all Pride Month and visit as many cities as I can so I can meet those trans youth and queer youth.
Absolutely. Well, I've just extended your tour because it's a summer of pride.
Yes.
Well, you know, our young people give us hope, and you give me hope.